Chapter 33, Fundamentals of Hydraulic and Air over Hydraulic Braking Systems. Day 1, Video 9, Disc Brake Caliper Assembly. So this is a little bit different drawing here of our disc brakes. So a complete drawing here. So we've got attached onto the hub is the disc, and here we can see those cooling fans, or the portion I was talking about with the built-in cooling fans inside of that rotor that pull air from around the disc into the center of it, and then it's flung out as a out through the outside here, outside ring of the disc. Transferring all that heat. So all the friction pads are working against the side of the disc brake rotor, creating the friction here, and then a large volume of air passing through that, constantly getting rid of that heat. And then our caliper assembly here, so the hydraulic line coming in here, creating the hydraulic pressure inside, or using the hydraulic pressure inside to move the caliper back and forth to squeeze those brake pads against the brake rotor. So a little bit different cutaway vision here. Here is the caliper, all right, and the hub and the rotor spinning through. So here's my rotor right here, so we can see an air gap in the middle where the air is pulled in through the middle and then flung through the rotor, again transferring the heat away. Here's our disc brake pads, right, that's causing the friction, and then the piston inside. So the hydraulic pressure is going to come in through here, and now that pressure is going to work on this surface area of the piston, forcing the piston into the friction material that's going to get forced into the brake rotor. Here we've got this type of a caliper has to slide, or a sliding caliper. So if we want to think of like a C-clamp, we're turning in this piston here, or putting the pressure here. This part of the caliper needs to rotate, or to slide into the rotor, and then once that happens, then no more movement of the caliper, and this pressure here is able to be applied on both sides of that disc through the piston, through the pressure on that piston, right, creating the braking friction, slowing the truck down. Kind of an exploded view of that disc brake. So we're going to have the anchor plate here that the caliper rides on, and we've got a smooth surface here and one located here, and I've got a corresponding groove on each end of that caliper that allows it to slide back and forth. So it has to be able to move back and forth for this caliper to operate properly. And then some of our keeper here that keeps the caliper located here on the anchor plate. Hydraulic pressure coming in, work coming into this cavity here where the pistons are located. So the pressure comes in, works on the back side of those pistons. We've got some sealing rings here that does not let that pressure escape around, and then some dust boots here that doesn't let this the wearing away the brake shoes creates a brake dust. We don't want that brake dust getting into that caliper around the pistons. Would cause it to seize up. So we put the dust boots here, and then here's our disc brake pads. So the surface area here working on the rotor, and then surface area on this other pad here. One thing I wanted to touch on is there is no self-adjuster on a disc brake system. What we do is, as this piston, the pressure is put on this side of the piston and it moves out, we've got a square piston seal, or square rubber seal that piston floats through. Right, there's a little bit of room in there for it to deform. That piston seal will deform just a little bit, and then when you release the brakes, that rubber seal wants to pull back to its original shape, and it pulls this piston back and returns it to its original position. So that's the return spring that we have for this piston caliper, or the piston inside the caliper. The self-adjuster, as these shoes or this friction material wear away, this piston will push further and further through that seal, the seal will deform, and then when you release the brakes, it pulls it back just a little bit. So that seal works to seal the pressure inside the caliper, and that works as the return spring and then also as the self-adjuster.